Let's just roll with it.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Unscripted Exchanges. I'm Hayden Huber, and alongside me is Cole Hazenfield.
Hey guys, well, thanks for coming back. Unscripted Exchanges, episode 6, I believe, and we've got a little bit of a surprise. I know we've been talking about guests, so I'll let Hayden do the honors of introducing our first guest.
Yeah, we're super excited to be bringing on our first guest of many. And we have a upcoming and rising business professional in the Cincinnati area, and we'll go into more detail. But I want to introduce Shannon Jacob to the show today.
Super excited to be here. Very flattered that I'm the first guest.
Now, have you been on a podcast before?
So I think no. Technically, I've hosted a very amateur podcast, like within the workplace. But that was short-lived.
Well, you've been involved with podcasts before, in one sense, is what you're saying.
I think we all have been involved in podcasts. You know, we just might not have a microphone and headphones on us. Like, conversation is essentially a podcast, right?
Yeah. No, and it wasn't this official. Like, we recorded on an iPhone.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with recording on an iPhone.
What she's saying is we look legit right now.
I
guess
exactly
so. We'll take that compliment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shannon. And you're wearing the Bengals hat?
I mean, had to.
Which I'm pumped about.
Did we see that win last night? Come on.
Unbelievable.
Let's go.
The first win of our lifetimes, right?
I know.
It's been 30 years or something like that. It's crazy.
I didn't know what to do. Like, my reaction, there really wasn't any. Because I just didn't know.
Right, because you were kind of shocked. You're just like,
wait, that happened?
We won.
Yeah.
And then Joe Burrow's like, yeah, we expected it. I'm like, none of us really, we were hoping for it. But
right.
You haven't been around for the past 20 years. We get our asses handed to us usually.
He wasn't even alive when,
No, he wasn't. He was like 90. Making it sound really young. None of us were. But, yeah, I think I agree with that. I didn't really want to react either. Yeah. I was driving, though. Because I had to listen on the radio, long story, but I was air pumping so hard that my daughter was like, please don't crash the car. The love.
Hey, the good guys came out on top. That's all that's important at the end of the day. Hopefully they can keep up their winning streak and make it to the Super Bowl. But we'll take it week by week. But anyhow, let's go back to Shannon and learn a little bit more about who you are, what you do, share whatever you want to share.
Sure. So just like Hayden and Cole, I am also a Cincinnati native. Grew up in like the College Hill area. I don't claim to be an East Sider or a West Sider because it's very central, so I stick to the central. I grew up in the central.
You're agnostic to that, basically. You're like right in the middle. You're neutral.
Yeah.
Neutral.
So. Like I don't really want to claim either side. Okay. And then we moved to Westchester in high school when I was 16, right when I got my license. Got married this year to my high school sweetheart. Yes.
He's watching us silently in the background, just so you listeners.
Yeah. We do have our first crowd member or audience today. Super exciting.
We need one of those cut-ins where it's like applause.
Hey, we'll work on that. You know, we'll get to that point. But baby steps.
Yes. So we just moved to Westchester as well. We're actually like a minute away from my parents, which is super fun.
Super convenient too.
Oh my gosh. It's amazing. I did my undergrad at UC, majored in international business and marketing. Kind of just picked it randomly, like didn't go into college like knowing what I wanted to do, but it ended up working out. Just finished my MBA at Indiana, so I'm officially a 2-degree holder, which I'm pretty proud of.
You're doing big things.
I am. It's been one hell of a ride. Like the past 2.5 years, I was, kind of thinking like, okay, what do I do? Like, what are my hobbies? I don't know if I have any because the past 2.5 years were wedding planning and school.
You've been on the grind. You've been working. You've been
getting it done.
Yeah.
You know, that gets me really excited. I'm jumping in, Shannon, but that gets me really excited because I've got 2 girls. And to hear you go, like, I'm crushing it, is what you're saying, okay? You're saying you're crushing it in the sense of, like, you're getting things done, you're motivated, you're working hard. The masters, like you went and got your masters on top of what? Getting married, like buying a house. I mean, that's a lot. That's
it was a lot.
Stuff.
People were like, when I like ran through everything that I've done in the past 2.5 years, even people were like, you just really like to be stressed. Like you really like stress. I'm like, well, no, I don't. I think I was just cranking it all out. So now, like, I don't have a lot of stress, which is really nice.
Yeah, put your head down.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You sound like someone that's really motivated and just wants to get stuff done, as well as just aspire to do big things, which is awesome.
I can never be bored.
Yeah.
Like, I always have to be doing something.
I think that's a great trait.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit biased because I find myself that way as well. You know, I'm always working on something, tinkering around, trying to improve myself. So, yeah, I can 100% relate. And going back to your point around not really saying that you live on the east side or the west side or associating more with, one side, I would say the east side is the best side. I had to throw that in there.
I drove over to the east side a lot in high school.
It's a good place to be. Cole and I grew up on the east side.
For us right now.
Yeah, I'm really good at doing that.
So I'm gonna jump in here because I wanted to jump back into something because I think I don't know if Shannon also introduced what she's currently doing in her career, because I think that's just like the icing on the cake. She got married, she bought a house, she got her master's. And she's also got like a badass career too. I mean, come on, like that's exciting.
Yeah.
This is not faked enthusiasm, just so everybody knows. I mean,
I appreciate
this
that.
is the real Cole.
This is the real.
It really is.
Introducing myself.
Yeah, it's been a crazy ride, like just career wise. So I've been at P&G for 5 years, a little over 5 years. I'm in my third role. So during all of the craziness that we just talked about, I also changed roles at P&G. So yeah, I started in cartons and corrugate, packaging, purchasing.
Okay.
So I'm a buyer, basically. I just buy things. I shop.
Right.
I have a very large
Who doesn't
checkbook.
like buying things, right?
Right, yeah.
Especially when it's not your money, right? Even though you're probably responsible for it, but
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah, I will say, like, negotiation-wise, I'm way tougher when it's not my money versus, like, if I go to buy a car, like, I'm not negotiating for that. It's
That's
very
also
different.
such an awkward thing when you go to a dealership and you're like, well, what's the best you can do? And they go, $29,999. You're like, but really? Like,
Yeah,
that's just
give me
uncomfortable.
the really. It's
yeah.
weird. It's
Then they go, well, we're only making 4% on this car. And you're like,
yeah.
so anyway, sorry, I jumped in there, but it's always awkward.
I
to do
know.
that.
It's way easier to negotiate when it's not your money.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh, well, this is a business thing. Like, it's nothing personal. But anyway.
That's your out.
I digress. Yeah, so I started in packaging, moved over to chemicals about 2 years into the company, 18 months-ish, and I was buying chemicals, buying a lot of ethanol. So when COVID hit and everybody needed hand sanitizer, that's what I was
buying
buying.
a lot.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot of material, time. Oh my gosh, working just so much. So I moved over into my current role in January of 21. So now I'm buying media. So I work with agencies and work in the gaming space, which is super fun. I'm not a gamer, but I now like nerd out about gaming stuff just because like I know probably way more than any human should.
That's awesome.
I want to go back to your point around negotiation. I think that's an underrepresented skill set that a lot of us probably could work on. How would you say your negotiation skills have grown or evolved over time? Like, was that something that you felt pretty strong at going into P&G, or did you have to work on that?
I wouldn't say as a 23-year-old coming into P&G, I was not confident in negotiation, especially since like a lot of the people that I'm dealing with on a daily basis are like the CFOs or CEOs of companies.
Sure, it's intimidating, right?
Yeah, and I'm 23 years old, and these people have been in the industry for forever. But we have a very robust training process around negotiation, which is really nice. But also, I think just the way P&G's culture is and like how we're taught to just always do the right thing, which is awesome, and it makes the job a whole lot easier. So I always say, like, if you get like an icky feeling about it, it's probably not
right. There's a reason why you've got an icky feeling.
Yeah, it's probably not the right approach, and something's off. So, yeah, I've definitely grown much more confident, but I'm also not like cutthroat or tough when it comes to negotiation. Like, I'm going to show you my hands.
There's a reason why you're making decisions and doing things the way you are. Okay.
Yeah.
You're transparent.
Yeah, I'm very transparent. I value the relationships that we have with like our external partners. So, I think that makes it easier too. Like when you have a relationship to lean on versus like going back to when you're buying a car, like you don't know this person. You're probably never going to see them again. So it makes it easier to like, I don't know.
I'm picking up what you're laying down.
Yeah.
It makes it easier to say this is just a one-time thing versus
exactly.
what you're saying is you've got that relationship that you're nurturing.
Yeah.
And you can't just have that one time. You're buying for Procter and Gamble. You're buying, when I was saying a lot earlier, like a lot of stuff. And so you've got to keep those relationships, like, right? You got to keep them transparent. You find ones, obviously, like you've probably found some you really like that you enjoy. There's also ones where you've been like, hey, I need to find a new vendor for this, a new vendor for that. Kind of piggybacking off of his question, which I think is super interesting. And this is something I've talked to my brother and sister about, and I've talked to other professionals about, is going to college, right? And so you majored in international business and marketing at UC. And then you went into Procter and Gamble and purchasing. And I guess my question to you and to you is like, as the past 5 years that you've been working there, what tools can you say, hey, I learned from school and I've transferred to here? And also, like, what can you say was just part of being out in that workforce and being thrown things like that are new and different? Because I think a lot of the times you hear, oh, well, if you go to college for this, like, you have to get a job in that. And it's like, you went into international business and marketing, and you're working for an international business, but you didn't start in marketing. It wasn't like you went into marketing. So I guess, like, that's a lot of questions. And
I was about to say, I think I lost.
I wrapped that up in a gift for you. I'm just trying to understand, like, your take on how your college life and going and get your master's has translated into that business life.
Yeah. So I will say I got to P&G with the goal of just get there, do whatever you need to do to get there, and then do a role. Yeah. Transfer to brand, because I did want to do the more traditional side of marketing. But once I started in purchasing, it checked my boxes, and I don't think I realized like what those boxes were for me until I started working. But I mean, it does translate to like what I liked about marketing. I like that there's no right answer. There's not like, it's not math and science. Like there's not, 2 + 2 = 4. It's very gray, which I like. If I can argue my way to a right answer, I'm going to, because I like to be right. So
love it.
I like that. I really like being close to the consumer and understanding why they make the decisions that they do. So I think those two aspects were like the big things for me that fed into why I like what I do.
Okay.
All to say, like, I did come to P&G with the intention of.
But it changed over time.
It did change.
It changed over time, and so what I'm gonna pull out of that is what you're saying. Maybe is to the people that are listening, like, realize is that you don't have to necessarily just go down one path again.
Oh no.
Like, you were like, hey, I just want to get into P&G because I know they've got a great culture, and I want to work there, and then I'll figure it out when I get there.
Yep.
And then your mind changed, but in a good way, right?
Yeah, things always evolve. I think as you just like progress through life, things evolve. My approach to like work-life balance even was way different when I was 23 versus what it is now.
Right.
What I want out of a job and the day-to-day, like,
it changes.
It's very different. Yeah.
That's awesome. I knew that was a loaded question, Shannon. So I appreciate you taking that and running with
Completely unscripted, by the way.
Yeah, I kind of just came in my head. I was just thinking about it.
That's a great question.
Yeah, I thought that'd be good for the listeners to hear. So again, I don't have any more questions I can think of right this minute.
I got a million questions that I could ask. We could keep this podcast going for 24 hours, or this episode for 24 hours straight. What was the biggest, and maybe I won't just narrow it down to one thing, but what attracted you to P&G? Maybe you touched on this a little bit before, but what drew you there?
Yeah. So I think what drew me to P&G was pretty superficial, but what keeps me there is a little bit more meaningful. So what drew me to P&G, I'm a Cincinnati native. P&G's like the big company.
That's where you want to
be.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to. If you're in business or interested in business, like, P&G is the end game for a lot of people.
Yep, certainly.
I've got family that worked at the company. I, grew up with friends whose parents worked there. Like, it was just always somewhere I knew could provide a good life for me. And yeah, it's just I didn't want to leave Cincinnati either, so
kind of best of both worlds.
Yeah, you can have a big company without having to go to like Chicago or New York. So I definitely liked big company, local to Cincinnati. A lot of different career paths that you can take within one company. I think that's what attracted me there. Like, again, pretty superficial, like college kid, not really knowing what the professional world was about.
Hey, there's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
I just wanted to hear, like what was your story related to that.
She's just like, I want to go work at P&G. How the hell do I get in there?
Exactly.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
Yeah.
And I didn't intern at P&G. I didn't co-op at P&G. I took that assessment 17,000 times. It felt like before I.
Wait, what assessment? So I don't know. I don't know these assessments.
So this is
educate me.
Yeah, the selection process at P&G is very thorough. We always say like now being at P&G, like we're the 1%ers because only 1% of the applicants get hired each year. But the assessment is like dreaded. Is very
it very
intense.
Very very intense? You said.
Yes, very intense. Like qualitative, quantitative, testing, everything.
Like how long is it?
I don't know if it's timed actually, because they've changed it since I last took it. But it takes a good amount
There's
of
a
time.
reason why P&G is known as the place to work for.
Oh, right.
They fully vet the people that they want coming in and working for their organization.
Yeah, it's crazy and it's super frustrating, especially when like you're not passing this assessment.
So how many times did you take it then, or do you get multiple times to take it? I mean.
Yeah, so you can only take it once a year. So every 365 days it expires and you have to retake it if you want to continue applying for P&G. I think during college I took it 4 times.
So you were taking it once a year basically.
Yeah, and on the 4th time.
That's dedication.
I passed.
That's exciting. That's like you're being competitive. You're like, no, I failed. I'm
gonna do that.
Yeah, next year I'm gonna get nice with the work. Yep. Okay. Well, I got the next one. I got the next year.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So, thinking more general here, what is some of the best advice that you've heard, as well as some not so great advice? And this can be life related, business related, whatever.
Yeah, I think the best advice, I don't know, and this kind of comes out of just my own experience in my own head. Like advice that I would give to somebody is just like be consistent and like don't put things aside. Like I failed that assessment 3 times. I could have very easily just like given up. Yeah, but I knew it's what I wanted to do and just kind of go after it.
Okay.
Worst advice?
That's a hard question.
Maybe you've never received any bad advice, which is awesome. I sure have received a couple of not so great.
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes into my head, I got advice one time: always speak up in a meeting, even if it's just reiterating what somebody else said. I think that's awful.
Yeah, that was okay. You just had a really good bad advice and a really good bad advice. Yeah, always speak up.
Oh, well, and it's like, well, nobody's gonna know if you're there if you don't speak up. I'm like, but you're devaluing your contribution to the meetings or whatever type of setting that you're in if you're just speaking just to speak. Like people will stop listening to you because they know that what you're saying isn't adding any value at all. So yeah, kind of a spin on another piece of advice that like I would give or I've received, like only speak when you actually have value to say, because when you do speak, then people are like really gonna listen. That's what you want.
That's something I've had to work on. I've actually gotten that advice before, believe it or not, in the professional environment. And I can totally I totally see what you're saying is like that's something I've had to work on again. Like speak up and say something that's like creating value. Mm-hmm. But if you're just gonna talk, which is fine in some settings, right? You're at a bar, you're having drinks with guys or girls or friends.
Doing a podcast.
Yeah, doing a podcast. Talk your ass off, right?
Yeah.
But you're in a business setting, you're doing a presentation, you've got this, and there might be a time for you to say something that's like really hard hitting, that's really key. There also might be a time, right, that's like, why the hell did you say anything? Why did you just reiterate? We just went over that in 5 different slides, and you just decided to replay the last 5 slides just so you could say something. You're saying like people are going to start not listening to you.
Yeah.
Which is something like, again, I've gotten that advice and taken that advice, and like sometimes you need to tone it back and say something when it's critical, or just talking to talk.
Yeah, and I think in a COVID world that we live in, like working from home and being in virtual meetings, having your camera on or not on, like making little tiny changes. Like I pretty much always have my camera on in meetings so that people at least can see that I'm there. Because if you're just like the standalone picture or like a black icon like on a Teams meeting, no one's gonna even know you're there, especially if you don't talk. But if you have your camera on, at the very least, like, okay,
they can see you and at least listening
and know that you're engaged, and can also kind of take a clue.
I would like to say something there because I totally agree with you on that. And I find myself sometimes, like if I have my camera off, I'm going to slack off, or maybe slack off's not the right word, but I'm going to get distracted and do other things. I'll be pinging people on the side, responding to emails. And like you said, if you have your camera on, you're fully engaged and actually listening. So I think that's a really good piece of advice to anyone out there that is still working remote, is to turn on your camera more. And it's nice to actually see people. As opposed to, like you said, a black screen. I know not always having the camera on it is, a thing, but yeah, it's certainly nice when you can actually see someone.
Okay, I have a funny story to that, to talk about the camera thing. Okay, so that's something that's always bothered me. You're nervous? You probably should be nervous. This is funny. But no, I always have my camera on, and that's again because of that point. Like I love that you said you do that.
I think I know where this is going. This is gonna be scary, but let's hear it.
No, it's not scary. It's funny. So the other day I was having a meeting with a client, and we were going through this project we're working on, and I was going through like a slide deck on my computer that I was going back and forth, and I was kind of sharing stuff, not sharing stuff, thinking back. So I got to the very end of it, and I said, okay, project worth is, it was a big deal. It was a big project, right? So it was kind of like we've been working on this. Let's get it done. What do you need for me to get the sign off, with your crew? And I was like, and I like the awkward silences a little bit. I like that little bit of tension in sales when you ask the question and you just let it sit, right? So I asked the question. I'm like, let's sit for a second. I didn't realize my camera was off. So I'm sitting there, and I'm sitting there. I'm sitting there. I'm like, okay, this is I'm like, what? And I'm waiting for them to say something. I mean, I'm not kidding you. Probably 2.5 minutes passed, and I was like, so you guys want to move forward with this? And he goes, your camera and mic were off. I typed it in the chat.
That's the worst.
I typed in the chat because I was sitting there and I'm like, I think something's wrong. I typed in the chat and I said, like, are you still there? Like, can you see me? He goes, huh? He hadn't even heard my question.
Oh, no.
He hadn't even seen me. So literally, I got it, I switched it back, and he's sitting there.
How often do you think that happens? Because that happens to me a lot, too. I've done it.
Super frequently. But it was just like, honestly, it was the CEO the first time I met with this guy. I was trying to play that awkward silence, and it just became, and I don't get awkward. I was like, that was weird. So yeah.
Have you ever?
That probably created no value. That story did for this conversation.
No, I loved it.
But it was kind of fun.
You can't have a meeting nowadays without saying like, "Oh, you're on mute," or "We can't hear you."
Right.
I mean, that's the world that we live in.
It is.
You would think it'd go away, but it doesn't.
It's crazy, and it is. So to your point, for the listeners out there, I love Shannon's motto: "Turn your camera on."
It's a great one.
Turn the camera on, and then you can use those little if you're embarrassed about your background or you're sitting out in your patio, whatever the hell you're doing, turn your blurred thing on or put a fake background. You don't have to show me what's going on behind you, but show your face.
Yeah.
Because it goes a long way because we live in more and more digital world. It's everything, let's do this virtual.
You know what another interesting thing is, or at least I've dealt with it at Kroger, is when you're in a pretty large online meeting, and the facilitator or the person leading the meeting hasn't joined yet, there's that awkward moment of silence, and sometimes it just lasts way too long, and who's gonna break the ice here? And sometimes I'll be that guy that just tries to be funny, and then sometimes I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna sit here too on mute. But it's how can we become more human-like in the digital world? And it's a tough thing to think about. I don't know if there's one answer, but I totally deal with that all the time, where there's 10 or 15 people on a call and no one's just saying anything.
Yeah,
It's is someone going to speak up here or what?
Jump in. All right, thanks all for coming.
I mean, think of it.
Nobody says anything. It's just because I've been that facilitator before, and you're like, hey, thank you all for joining in, and nobody says a word. And you're like, sometimes I'm like, are you guys still there?
Right.
Yeah, but you could have said something. It's nice to see you too, Cole.
It's walking into in a physical world, an office room, meeting room, and literally no one says anything. They're all staring at you. It's like,
Yeah.
are you gonna speak? It's so bizarre. And I guess I'm describing it with everyone having their cameras on. Most people don't have their cameras on, but still, it's just like it's a blank screen. It's like we're wasting time. Like, how do we make better use of this time? I don't know. I find it kind of goofy.
It's like the small talk is just gone.
Yeah, nobody feels a need to even do it anymore.
Right, exactly. And I find that even I'll go into the office like 1 to 2 days a week now.
Is that on your, like, did you choose to do that, or do you have to be in the office?
We don't have to be, like, everything's very flexible, which is really nice. But people will come up to me, like, I'll be working, and people will be like, hey, like, how was your weekend? And I don't know what to do.
Because you haven't been doing it for a while.
I haven't been doing it. Like, nobody bothers me, well, except for Alex, like, during the workday, or the dog, but, like...
He's getting called out.
But, I don't know, like, the small talk is so hard.
See, you could just be like me, and you could just take the small talk and then tell somebody way too much about your life. Okay? I go from like, hey, how's it going? Like, what you been up to like, hey, listen to the fight my wife and I got in like 3 weeks ago. I really don't give a shit, but thanks for sharing. So
I like
that's my spin on it.
I like the person that does that for those early morning meetings when you're still finishing up your bowl of cereal. You got that talkative person. It's like, all right, keep going so I can finish up with these last few lines. So thank you, Cole.
Thanks
we
for
need more
joining
people
in.
like you out
do.
there. Need that energy for sure.
Yeah, where you can. I've been trying to think of like a good way to like start small talk conversations. It's not the typical one.
Mm-hmm.
I still haven't. I feel like I'd be like. I feel like I'd be very, very rich if I can come up with this, like, in other aspects. Like, I feel like if I come up with another way to say it, other than like, hey, how you been, or how are things going? Like, what else could we say? And this is such a like. This is where my brain goes when we're talking about this stuff. Just so you know, what else could I say to start a small talk conversation? You could like stalk somebody on Facebook, like, hey, I saw you got a new cat. Like, how's the cat doing?
Yeah, I feel like the world that we live in is like so digital, like we've been talking about. But I have a sorority like alumna. Is that the right term? Yeah.
Sounds right.
Yeah, event like later this week, and like, oh yeah, like there are gonna be people there that I haven't seen since college, but like I feel like I know what's going on in their life because of social media.
Right.
So I feel like it, to open up a conversation like that, it could almost come off a little weird. Like if you're like, hey, like saw your Instagram story this weekend.
But you're
like,
bringing up another good
okay?
point, is because with social media, we get the information that we need and we move on. So we don't feel like we need to reach out to this people.
Exactly.
Oh, I saw that you did X, Y, and Z over the weekend. Cool, I'm done. I'll move on to the next person.
I've been doing that to you lately. I'm like, hey, how's so-and-so doing? And I'll be like, I haven't seen them in 7 years. He's like, I'm surprised he's going like, just shut up and call him, Cole.
I have.
I'm not. He's like, I'm not gonna be your middleman.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also that point, like, if you were to be like, hey, like, you almost don't want to ruin them telling you about that, right?
Exactly.
So you're like, hey, how you doing? And let them, even though you've seen them on, like, Facebook and stuff, let them, like, feed that to you. Because people like to talk about that stuff, too.
Oh, for sure. And you don't want to be like, hey, I saw on Facebook, like, you guys got a new car over the weekend. Like, how's it
right.
Like, that just sounds weird.
How's the steering?
Yeah.
You like the tires? What size rims did you get? What kind of gas mileage is it?
That's a little, like, too personal.
Right. Like, hey, how's life going? Nice car. By the way, I saw you about, where's your house located at? And also, what's your blood type, too?
Exactly.
Now, another thing that I find myself working on to improve is not pinging other team members that are on the same call, because that's kind of distracting. And I have that happen as I'm the receiver of messages, and I'll use like the same type of analogy. It's like being in a physical meeting room and someone just getting up and shouting or talking to you. It's like, it's so rude, but I find myself doing that. Do you deal with that at all?
Oh, yeah. And a lot of the times, like, in the position I'm in, we're dealing with external, like, parties to P&G. So we'll be paying, like, oh, they just said this. Like, this is what I'm taking away from that. Here's what you should, like, chime in and say this. So we'll be, like, in the background kind of
trying to, like, break down the conversation.
Yeah, just, like, figuring out what the approach is. And,
that's
like,
tough.
If we can. But even in in-person meetings, if we have our computers, like, that would happen.
You guys still do that?
Yeah. But even, like, if I'm face-to-face with somebody, I try really hard not to bring my computer to a meeting.
She's dropping all sorts of good advice here.
I had a good one. I had a good follow-up question for that too. So
I received that piece of advice, like,
that's
don't
really good.
Bring your computer, and I was like, oh god, like, how am I supposed to take notes? I'm gonna have to take notes twice. Like, what if I forget, like, the agenda or talking points or whatever? But it got me to just, like, prepare for each meeting before I go in, which is, actually super helpful.
You're right, super critical. I mean, you were prepared coming in here. First thing she said for all our listeners is, I'm a type A, and I'm ready to rock, and I've also got some, like, bullet points I want to hit on. So I'm just kidding, she didn't say that.
No.
But she definitely was prepared to come in here and have a great conversation, which I think we're having.
But I think she threw those notes away. We've kind of gone off the script a little bit because we're unscripted.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, it's okay.
It's like a safety blanket.
Yeah. It's something to read over. It's okay. We got the conversation going. I want to go back to that point about, you mentioned, this was a while back, you mentioned work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, because we've talked about this, and we have very similar viewpoints on, like, work-life balance, like how much you should be working, right? Which is a, like, quote unquote should be working, but not necessarily believing, like, okay, you have to work like 90, 100 hours and just grind and get no sleep. And like you said, in the past 5 years, my outlook on work-life balance has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to know, like, what has changed, and what is your mindset going into that now? Obviously, very career-driven woman, which I'm super pumped about. I get 2 daughters. I want them to be, like, taking on the world like you are. But, yeah, can you get into that a bit?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. I feel like coming out of college, we all are like, you have to pay your dues. Like, work really hard, pay your dues, and then you're going to move up, and things will get better. Like, work-life balance will get better. I don't know. I feel like I had that mindset for a little bit, but the culture at P&G doesn't really support that, which is nice. They very much promote, like, being...
So they want you to have a life outside of work, is what you're saying.
Yeah, like, focus on family, do what you need to do to make sure that the company is getting the best out of you. But I think it took a while for me to actually figure out, like, oh shit, they actually mean that. Like, when the CEO says stuff like that and the leadership at P&G say that, like, it's actually true.
He's not just saying that to, like, sound good for the media, or like, hey, I want to be the best, like, CEO. No, he's, like, legitimately like, hey, listen, you guys, that's, if you're going to bring your best to work, you better have a great outside work life too.
Exactly, yeah. And in my last role, before I got into media, it was really tough for me. Like, I was not good, like, from a mental standpoint. Like, I was working an insane amount. Like, it was a 24-hour operation all the time, and it was hard.
You were burning both ends of the candle.
Yeah, it was hard. And I'm doing my MBA, planning a wedding, selling a house, moving. Like, it was just a lot, and I was done. I couldn't do it anymore. So I think that's kind of another thing that, like, advice that I would give, like, you got to learn how to, like, speak up for yourself and advocate for yourself. And I definitely learned, because it got so bad for me. And this was nothing like the job, leadership, nothing like that. It was more so, it just wasn't a good fit for me.
Yep.
And I had a lot going on. So I think that being in, like, such an extreme place when it came to, like, zero work-life balance, I realized, like, okay, something has to change. So now I don't think your role or changing jobs or, like, going somewhere for, like, this huge promotion you should have to sacrifice, like, your happiness.
100%.
Like,
100%.
You couldn't pay me enough to go back to the space that I was in, just because it just wasn't a fit for me.
Yep.
And you weren't happy. Like, all you were doing is, again, you were in that, like, constant anxiety.
Exactly.
Working, have to work so much, have to do so much. And you're saying, like, so it sounds like the biggest thing that's changed for you is understanding that there's some things that you like. Money's great. Some things that make you money, and
work will always be there.
Yeah, work will always be there. And also, I don't know if you've noticed, I was the same way, right? I was going through that, like, I'm gonna work so much. I had my daughter young. I'm gonna work 90 hours a week. I'm gonna do this and this, and it's like I find myself being way more productive now by just giving, like, the attention I need to give to my personal life, the attention I need to give to my wife, my kids, my, going out and going for a hike, going out and exercising. Like, if you give that in, then the work will, like, if you're good at what you do and if you're engaged when you're there, you get, like, 5 times the amount of work done because you're engaged in it, because you want to be doing it, because all the other stuff, so, like, that's that center of gravity that you found. And then again, for me at least, I know you also, I'm sure you know, sometimes there are times in life when you don't have a choice. But you've got to get through those.
Yep.
And you've also got to know when, like, you're doing too much. And if it's the situation you're in, you got to get yourself out of that situation. If it's a job, got to find another job. Or, you, like you said, you had that tough conversation, it sounds like this isn't working. And I don't want to leave P&G, but this is not working for me.
Yeah, that's
and P&G sounded like they knocked it out of the park. They're like, hey, we understand.
Yes. Yeah, if you're good, like, a company will do what they need to do to make sure that you're happy. And I think, like, it also makes such a big difference to see your leadership, like, leading by example and actually putting that stuff into practice versus it just being, like, buzzwords.
That's huge.
Or buzz phrases.
They're practicing what they preach. Yeah. Is what it sounds like.
Yeah, like, I had my first one-on-one with my now, like, 2-up manager, and she was prepping dinner. Like, it was like 3:30, and she's like, I'm just getting dinner ready, like, before, the kids get home from school. Like, Wednesday nights are the nights that I cook dinner for my families and, like, make it a big thing. And, we're just having, like, a one-on-one, and I'm like, of course, like, cameras on, like, actually did my makeup for once, like, during the work from home week, and, like, very prepared. And she's, like, very casual, like, just cooking. And, like, that's awesome. Like, the multitasking in a meaningful way that helps you feel like you have a balance, it's such a game changer.
They're bringing that human element or that human connection into the work life, which is great.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Now, I think we should wrap things up here in the next few minutes, but definitely want to hit on a couple of quick hitters. But before we dive into that bit, I know I came a little bit prepared myself. I had some notes over here.
I knew you were going to do that.
I do want to ask just this last question, though, around, like, what advice would you give your future self, as well as advice that you believed in at a younger age and you kind of abandoned for whatever reason, but think it kind of actually still holds true?
Yeah. So advice that I would give my future self, continue to try to not put so much pressure on yourself. I'm very type A. I am very much a perfectionist. Like, I have to be doing everything perfect all the time and making everybody happy, never say no. So I think just continuing to try. Like, I very much try.
So
I'm
maybe
not very good
she
at
just
it.
said yes to come on the podcast because she doesn't know how to say no.
Oh, no.
We caught her before she committed to that. Let's go.
Right,
Thanks again for coming on.
Okay, so I like that. I saw a quote, and now I'm jumping in here. I saw a quote that you would love the other day. And I'm not quoting it verbatim, but it was, deal with what you need to deal with now, let it go and move on later.
Yeah.
So you're saying, like, the pressure part of it. Like, you can feel under pressure and stuff, but you're saying, like, just let it go.
Yeah.
But you can't constantly put pressure on yourself about things that you can't do anything about.
Yeah, and, like, even said differently, not making other people's problems my own problem. Like, if somebody's having a hard day, like, I can be there to listen and be an empathetic ear, but, like, that's not my
That's
problem.
not your hard day.
Right. That's not my stress that I need to be putting on myself. And I think that also comes with age, too.
Maturity, for sure.
None of us like to admit that we're not completely mature at 22 and 23 till we hit, like, this 28, 29, 30.
I think that was just
like,
Cole. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay, you don't think, right? You're like, oh man, I'm growing up.
Well, don't they say that your brain's still, like, developing until age 25, which I don't believe that. I think your brain's always developing.
Right.
You should be trying to always learn new information.
But there's things that you look back on going, why was it, like, again, why was I not that patient in this?
Certainly.
Yeah.
Why was I stressed out about this? It didn't really matter.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. And I think advice that I would, hold on.
The question was what advice, or not advice, but what advice were you given growing up at a young age and you kind of disabandoned it, over time you matured or you started to think back on it and like, wow, that actually was pretty important and it actually holds true.
Yeah. Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
I feel like I was told that a lot when I was younger, and then as I got older, it's definitely very true, but when things are shitty and when things are hard, it's like, oh my god, like, why am I going through this? Like, I don't get it. But then when you come out on the other side, you're like, okay, this stuff happened so that I'm now here. Like, I'll give one example. My grandma passed away when I was in the 3rd grade, and she was like my best friend. I'm like, why? Like, why would this happen?
You were devastated.
I'm like, why would this happen? Like, little Shannon was like, this makes 0 sense. But that spurred us moving to Ohio, like, from Kentucky. And if I didn't move to Ohio, like, who knows where I would be?
Right.
That's huge. It's like the butterfly effect.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
Everything
and
happens
now,
for a reason.
yes, and now I have that tattooed on my foot, and
I'm seriously so in love with that answer. Okay, you could not have given us a better answer.
That was perfect.
I mean,
you passed the test here.
Yeah, I was just thinking like learn to still have fun or something like that, and you're like everything happens for a reason. I'm like, damn, she just hit me.
I mean, we've all heard it, but the way that you described it was
yeah.
just so real, and I love it.
And it's so true, like right, and like you said, you're in it, especially in that spurt of like getting out of in college, and you're trying to control everything too, right? So when you can't something you can't control, you're like, this isn't happening for a reason. This is BS.
Exactly.
I love it. I'm taking that one.
Thank you for sharing all this wisdom.
Seriously, you're making me a better
people
person
after today. Now, let's wrap things up here with a 60-second bit on just some quick hitters. Cole, you can jump on in here. You'll catch my drift here in a sec.
I know what you're going with.
You do?
I'm picking up what you're laying now.
Can you read my mind or something? Or did we have this scripted?
I was just hoping you were going to start, and I was going to act like it.
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah,
all right, Shannon. Here we go. Cincinnati Reds game or Cincinnati Bengals game?
Bengals for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's go. Okay, Skyline Chili or Gold Star?
Skyline.
Day or night?
Day.
Beach or lake?
Debatable.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. It depends. Like a beach is fun.
It's got its
every
place.
once in a while, yeah, like a summer vacay, like that's cool. But going down to Cumberland like a couple times over the summer, you can't beat that.
Wait, I've got a twist for you then.
Oh god.
Lake Michigan's got beaches. So Lake Michigan Beach
Best of both worlds.
or Saltwater Beach or like
I don't like going to the beach because I'm bait for other larger animals out there.
And you probably bake in the sun. Like I get so fun.
Oh, I turn red as a lobster.
Yeah.
I don't get tan at all.
We
Look at this skin complexion here, guys.
This was supposed to be a 60-second bit. I'm like,
turn it into something
Lake
else.
Michigan or Lake Erie, coastline or inner.
Cole and I have a tough time wrapping things up, so that's why we just keep going.
That's an Ohio thing.
Yeah, you know when you're supposed to leave a party and it takes you about 10-15 minutes to actually leave. Yep. That's what this is.
Hayden's like, Cole, you gotta go now.
Irish goodbye.
Yeah. See, 20 minutes later, I think it's time for you to go.
Well, I think that really is all that we have for today. Really want to extend our gratitude and thanks to Shannon for coming on today's show.
Yeah,
our
thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, it was a blast. We certainly learned a lot of good stuff, a lot of good information that I'm going to quickly implement in my life. I don't know about you, Cole, but
I just thought this was awesome. This was great.
This was so fun.
It was super fun for us too. And then we got into it. And then when you said, I'm just gonna hang on that. Everything happens for a reason. I think you couldn't have gotten a better. That was like the best answer I've ever heard in my life. So I'm using that later to see.
Love it.
So once again, we want to thank all you guys for tuning in. Please reach out to us at unscriptedexchanges@gmail.com to ask us any type of questions or if you have additional topics that you would like us to discuss, as well as joining us in the future. We've got a backlog of guests filling up for the rest of the month and next month. But once again, thanks for tuning in and have a great day.
Thanks for joining Unscripted Exchanges.
See y'all, guys.